Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we've got some business to attend to. Let's go over to the mind map as usual so that we can get our bearings straight. We left off last week talking a lot about Donald Trump and the special master. Of course, as soon as we got off the program on Friday, government prosecutors said, oh, well, I guess now's an appropriate time to file our appeal. And they did. 29-page document that we are going to get into, going all the way up to the 11th Circuit. And so we'll take a deep dive on this. I really want to spend some time on it because the Court of Appeals is issuing some pretty immediate orders. Pretty urgent responses are due. In fact, there's a response due tomorrow by noon over there at the 11th Circuit by Donald Trump's team. And so you can see that right there. 12 p.m. Tuesday. This means that the Court of Appeals is coming in hot, right? I mean, they want some action on this quickly. So we'll take a look at the appeal coming out from the government prosecutors. We also got an order from the special master. His name is Raymond Dearie. He submitted a new order. And so also tomorrow, Trump and his people are supposed to be meeting with the special master. I'm going to keep doing that. But the special master is also meeting tomorrow. And so you've got these two sort of parallel things taking place, the special master prosecution and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals appeal. So we're going to take a look at all of that. And then it was a very interesting thing. I sort of skipped over all of this, but it was very interesting. There was a motion that was filed apparently by the U.S. Treasury seeking to intervene in on the Trump search warrant case. And so we'll take a look at that. What is the U.S. Treasury doing having to insert themselves into this conversation? Well, we'll take a look. Then after we're done with the Trump updates, we're going to turn our attention over to the wine moms out there in Martha's Vineyard. You see this woman here, very animated, very sad and somber moments because the migrants left. They were there for about 44 hours and they had to leave. But they apparently enriched the people over there on Martha's Vineyard. And so we've got more stories here. They're telling them, adios, te amo, we love you, bye-bye. And this woman here is crying all over the place, saying that the immigrants are never going to leave their hearts. As long as they leave their islands, they're not going to leave their hearts. So we'll go into that. And then there's, there's really policy updates here. I mean, because Muriel Bowsers out in D.C. is very unhappy about this. She said, we're not Texas. What do you think we are? A bunch of cowboys? So she says, the sophisticated people there in D.C. are much better than everybody else. Mayor Adams out of New York, same thing. He's saying all hands on deck. This immigration thing is turning into a catastrophe for us. And Gavin Newsom wants DeSantis and some of the busing governors prosecuted. And so we'll take a look at the letter that he sent over to the Department of Justice. Of course, Gavin Newsom. Now there are news reports saying that as long as Joe Biden doesn't run, Gavin Newsom will be in the fray. So we'll take a look at that. And then lastly, there's this new interview of our president who sort of mumbles his way through this conversation over on CBS. And a lot of new policy came out of this interview. Quite shocking, probably for America, for the Chinese, for the White House, his administration, everybody else who's his handler. They're all watching this going, oh my gosh, what? COVID is over. We're defending Taiwan now. That strategic ambiguity thing that we were kind of adhering to for a while, that's gone. Biden tells us he doesn't think about age at all. It's not even that big of a thing. He's like, no, I'm spry, baby. What are you talking about? I can almost stand on a bicycle. And so we've got that. NBC's got a new poll saying that many Americans are very concerned about the economy and they are blaming Joe Biden about it. And so we've got more from him on inflation and just a whole lot of Biden stuff to get to at the end of the program. And so, my friends, if you want to be a part of the show, you can see we've got a lot to attend to today. And if you want to join in on the fun, the best place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Amazing chat over there, chatting away. Shout out to my friends, Zach Nichols. We've got John McGarvey's in the house. JC the Music Man's over there. Al Bayan Thailand is there. Shout out to C. Reed. They were sharing some memes earlier, and there were some pretty funny ones, including the one of the, you can't put it on YouTube, obviously, but the woodshop teacher out there in Texas that's got like watermelon implants or what, something's going on there. Funny memes over there. Yeah, shocking stuff. The other place you can support the show and join in on the fun is over at our membership on YouTube. Click that join button right there, right next to the subscribe channel button link thing. I was thinking about those watermelons and it's just a lot for me. So you get those gifts if you're over there and you click join. The Hunter GIF, the Binger GIF, all of the other gifts. A lot of fun, and I appreciate your support. You also get those morning walk and talks, right? So we post videos every morning where we carry on the conversation that we have here. And no matter whether you support us on Locals or on YouTube, you get access to those walk and talks. It's just sort of a way that I can create a little bit more and we can have a conversation sort of outside of the show. So join up if you want more of that. And before we get into it, thank you for remembering that I am a criminal defense lawyer at the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. We help people from all over the world who come to Arizona get in a little bit of trouble. Weather's cooling off now. It's getting to be very nice here. There's going to be bachelorette parties. There's going to be all sorts of fun. But the police know that. And they're going to be out in full force. And they're going to go and arrest people and cite them for all sorts of stuff. And that's where we help. We preserve the presumption of innocence. We maintain the burden of proof. Free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. We're grateful for your support. Really, your referrals, you sending people to us keeps us busy, and it enables us to do the work that we do here. So thank you for helping us fulfill our mission and do the work that we do best. All right. And so let's get this queued up now so we can actually get into some serious heavy lifting. You can see on the mind map that we've got some documents that we've got to attend to. And so let's get into it. Government prosecutors now appealing the special master ruling from Judge Aileen Cannon. They say that they don't want anybody meddling in their investigation of Donald Trump, the former president. Today, we're going to take a look at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where the government appeal landed. There's a 29-page document that we'll read through. This is the basis for why the government says that the special master shouldn't have possession over, if you remember, those 100 very confidential documents that they said were the end of America if somebody sees them, so on and so forth. So we'll get into that. But first, I want to make sure that we understand sort of what they're appealing, which is the special master, because the special master, Raymond J. Dearie, was already appointed, and we talked about him previously on this channel, but they also now have him taking action. The judge ordered him to do certain things, and Raymond Dearie said, perfect, I'm ready to go. And so he's already issued an order. So while the government is appealing this and saying, we want you to undo the appointment of this special master, the special master is already off to the races. And so let's take a look at what the special master is doing before we take and see what the Court of Appeals is debating. This was filed on September 16th. It is one page, Donald Trump versus United States of America. This is the special master order. And look who signed off on this thing. It's Raymond J. Dearie. Normally, on this case, we're used to seeing Judge Aileen Cannon, United States District Judge. But this one's coming from another judge. He's from the Eastern District of New York, I believe. And now he is signing off on an order going to the same parties, going to Trump's defense and the government prosecutors, signed in Brooklyn, New York, which is where he is based. And here's what it says. It says, okay, Trump, you lawyers, and it says government prosecutor, you lawyers, counsel are directed to appear before the undersigned, before me, in courtroom 10 of the Brooklyn Federal Courthouse on Tuesday, September 20th at 2 p.m. for a preliminary conference in the above captioned matter. And show up here in my courtroom, right? Don't call in, no virtual, nothing, none of this stuff. And remember, the other case is actually taking place out of the Southern District of Florida, right? They were in Florida in Judge Aileen Cannon's courtroom. So he's calling them all the way up to Brooklyn, making them haul their butts all the way up north. Before the meeting takes place, which is on Tuesday, counsel are invited to submit proposed agenda items for discussion by docketed letter to be filed by the close of business on Monday, September 19th, 2022, which is today, the recording of this video. And so the prosecutors at the time of the start of this show, they have submitted their memoranda, their proposal for the agenda for the following day. And here we have that pulled up. Filed September 19, 2022, coming out of the National Security Division from the U.S. Department of Justice. 113 pages? Oh my gosh! Well, obviously, we're not going to be able to get through all of that here today. But let's see what is in here. This is going over to Judge Raymond J. Dearie out of the Eastern District of New York. And they say, hey, Judge, you wanted an order. You told us to send you over a proposed agenda. And here's what we've got for you. Dear Judge Dearie, pursuant to your order, you invited us to submit a proposed agenda for the preliminary conference held on Tuesday, September 20th. The government submits the following agenda. And the proposed agenda is as follows. Number one, government says that we would like to talk about the precise mechanics of document flow. And remember, in Judge Aileen Cannon's order, we talked about this at length. It was essentially the government has the documents. They send it over to Trump's lawyers. They look at the documents. They make a spreadsheet of the documents. They send the spreadsheet back over to the prosecutor. The prosecutor looks at the spreadsheet. They say, okay, row 1 through 5. Okay. They say, we agree with you on this one. That's executive privilege. We agree with you on that one. That's not executive privilege, but we disagree with you on this one. You say it's executive privilege. We say it's not. And they bring that one that is a disagreement over to the attention of the judge, right? This process back and forth. And so it was sort of laid out for us, but certainly there's going to be more mechanics here. Like the government prosecutors are going to be like, well, wait a minute, what email does it come from? And you know how prosecutors are. They're just a pain in the butt and they're just whining all the time. And so they're just like, well, I don't know what happens if we send it to this email, or how length of time till he responds. And there's total dorks. So they want to know the precise mechanics of the workflow. All right. Number two, aspects of the order appointing you as special master and discussion of the draft case management plan provided by the special master to the parties on September 19th. So they're like, hey, judge, the judge gave you all of these powers in their special order, master order, and we have questions about, what your powers are. And so we want to discuss this with you on that date. And then number three, they also want the next progress review and the status conference. So probably, schedule some dates and get things in alignment. Now, they say the government elaborates on each one of these topics below. Okay, and so this is short before they're probably slapping in a whole big, addendum of documents or supplements to the end of this thing. So we can go through this. It says, the government elaborates on each of the proposed topics below. Now, the precise mechanics of the document workflow. They're like, all right, hang on a second here. Judge, they say the appointment order contemplates the review of approximately 11,000 documents that we took through a court-authorized search warrant. It says that all of that's going to be done shortly after Thanksgiving. Footnote 1. They're saying the government applied to the 11th Circuit for a stay last week, and the plaintiff's response is due tomorrow at noon before the master's preliminary conference. If the 11th Circuit stays Judge Cannon's order with respect to the documents, then the special master will not review the documents with classified markings, okay? If the 11th Circuit does not stay the review of the documents, the government will propose a way forward, right? And remember, the reason why the government was filing this appeal was because the judge said all the documents are going over to the special master, including the 100 confidential documents that the government was freaking out about. The 11,000 documents, they're like, whatever, we can give or take those 11,000 documents. But those 100 documents we're very concerned about. And so we want this to be resolved, right? We want to get more details of this. And so they're asking the special master to detail his plan based on what happens with the special master appeal. Okay, so we've got these two things, so it's hard to keep track of both of them. But this is the agenda that the special master is going to attend to tomorrow. And there's also an appeal that might implicate how the special master handles everything, right? So there's multiple layers going on here. So he continues. He says, now, the review process generally requires the plaintiff to categorize the seized materials as presidential records or personal records, assert the privileges that they believe apply, record those in a log, and then send those over. For its part, right, the government is going to review Trump's position, agree or disagree. Any disagreements are going to go back to the special master. And then there's going to be recommendations to the judge, okay? They look at the spreadsheet, they fill it out, they send the spreadsheet back, they fill it out, disagreements, they go up to you guys. So they say to implement the appointment order and to complete the special master review process in an efficient and timely fashion, the government proposes that a third-party vendor be engaged to scan, host, and go through all of the documents. They want this company called a relativity platform here. So they want each private workspace, they want this company to come in and scan all this stuff, basically. The relativity document review platform is familiar to both parties, going to be secure. and we can all do our discovery on this document. To provide documents for the Trump team as soon as possible, the government is prepared to provide the seized materials, not including the filter materials, to the vendor, and we can start the process soon. The government proposes that the document review vendor batch out the documents on a rolling basis, logging 500 documents at a time. You see non-documentary items will be made available to Trump's counsel. And so it's all of the mechanics. Not that interesting. Once the parties agree that the certain items are personnel records, then the court has made the determination. The government will then return the items that were not commingled with the classified documents by stipulation. The government will maintain a control copy of the returned materials. Right. And so we're going to see if Donald Trump and his team has filed something that should have hit the docket. So we'll take a look at it as soon as we're done here. But they may disagree with this, right? Because a lot of this actually is important because it has to do with possession of the materials. The government says that everything that we're talking about is theirs. They have a possessory interest. If it's confidential, it's theirs. If it's anything that's a presidential record, it's theirs. And so they're basically saying that they should be in possession, physical possession of these things for as long as possible. They don't want Trump to have it at all. Now, this is, in my opinion, something that is the key issue, right? This is the issue that is the crux of the whole thing. That hasn't been litigated yet. Nobody's proven one way or the other whether it is a presidential record or a personnel record or whether it is confidential or declassified. We don't know those things. Now, other aspects of the appointment order. The prosecutors are proposing, they say the government strongly urges the special master to consult with NARA when it's making its determinations. All right, so they're saying, Judge, there's a little bit of gray area here. The order said that you can permit the special master to consult with NARA, but we are strongly urging you to consult with NARA, right? Because NARA is on team Biden, team DOJ. The Biden administration wants to take out Donald Trump. They've done that through a documentary proceeding. They basically waived executive privilege. NARA said you wanted the records back. The White House waived it. We covered this previously. The judge found Aileen Cannon in her own filings that Biden approved this, authorized the FBI to go get these documents back. We've covered that previously on the show. So if all that's happening now, right, the government strongly urging the special master to consult with NARA. Why? Well, because NARA is in the tank. And the order only permitted the special master to do it. The special master is not obligated to go to NARA and get their back and get their conclusion for how to categorize these documents, what document bucket they fall into. They say the prosecutors write, the government is also prepared to address any questions the special master has for the parties on the order. They're asking about the next progress review. They say for at least the first few weeks as you're going through this stuff, Mr. Special Master, the government proposes that the master conduct weekly reviews with the parties by video or audio conference to resolve any problems. The government is also available to meet in person if the special master prefers. They say attached to this letter and pursuant to this order, the government provides a search warrant, executed and redacted public versions of the underlying application materials. Also, please review the following remainder of these documents. Here's the search warrant. And we covered basically all of this. Okay, so yeah, this is the entire, they're supplementing their filing with basically everything else that they filed in the case, okay, because it's in a different courtroom. And so they're adding basically the entire case file. And so we're going to just scroll, the affidavit, the application for the warrant, all of the sealing requests. And then we finally get to the exhibits. Yeah, and then these are all the letters, right? These are the letters. And so we've covered, I'm going to guess this entire, applications. Let's see what's at the very end here. All the way at the bottom of page 113, certificate of services, acknowledgement. And then this was some protective orders. And yeah, okay. So the rest of it, sort of mechanical stuff, protective orders for the debates that are going to be taking place sort of under the confines of special master, right? When they're talking about certain things, they don't want anybody who's involved to be able to go and communicate these things. And so they're going to be, issuing protective orders. So 113 pages. That is the proposed agenda by government prosecutors that was requested by Raymond J. Dearie, the special master. And while we're here, let me actually see if has been an update, because Trump's team should have filed something. And so let's see if we have those available while we're here. He had not filed anything, but business should be closed. And here it is. They did file. So take a look. We've got here notice by Donald Trump regarding the order regarding the proposed agenda, filed by Lindsay Halligan. Let's see what Lindsay Halligan has for us here. And so we'll make sure we get our nice red pen out and dig into this one. Donald Trump's defense team filing their proposed agenda for the special master. They say, "Dear Judge Dearie, on September 16th, Your Honor invited the parties here to propose an agenda for the meeting. And this afternoon, Your Honor provided the parties with a draft case management plan. And by way of responding to the invitation for these documents, here is our plan as follows." Trump and his team are stating the following. They say the district court's order indicates that the presumptive end date of November 30th is set in stone. They say the proposed calendar circulated today by the parties only compresses the entirety of the inspection and the labeling process to be completed by October 7th, they say. We respectfully request that all of the deadlines can be extended to allow for a more realistic and complete assessment of the areas of disagreement. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so government prosecutors, they want this thing done now. They want it done immediately. They were so unhappy that there was a delay at all. They were saying that, "Judge, you're stopping our criminal investigation of the former president. America's going to melt down. How dare you? We're appealing it," which we'll get to in a minute. But in the meantime, they said, "Can we please just at least continue on with these 100 documents?" And the judge said, "Well, no. Special master is being appointed anyways." So they want to rapid fire this through. Trump's team says, "Well, what's the rush? We got a lot of areas of disagreement." I'm pretty sure that when they categorize something as executively privileged, we're going to say, "No, it ain't." And if they say it was confidential, we're going to say, "No, it isn't." So Trump's defense, they say, "Judge, along those lines, so that we can work all of these things out, and to assure the court that the parties are operating with the appropriate urgency, we would suggest a status conference in roughly 2 weeks to gauge how long the inspection process and the rolling categorizations are taking, and to take a fact-based measure of the likely duration of the events." Now, you see how the defense attorneys work versus how the prosecutors work. Okay, the prosecutors are a bunch of dorks over there, and these guys are like, roughly 2 weeks. What's good? 2 weeks from now. Pick it. Friday's good for you. Just put it on the calendar, and we'll be able to sort through this. We'll take a fact-based measure, likely duration of these events. Okay, yeah, we'll just kind of rolling categorizations. We can work through it. They say, in the meantime, though, we provide below an informal grid of party obligations under Judge Cannon's order and possible deadlines to be discussed tomorrow or soon thereafter. They tell us the responsibility is that the government provides copies of the filter team documents considered possibly privileged. That has already been done. So it sounds like the Trump team has gotten copies of those documents that may have been privileged, already been delivered. Government prosecutors providing copies of all other documents except those marked as classified, which is basically the biggest bulk of these documents. Remember, there was 11,000 documents seized. Only a tiny fraction of those were confidential, problematic documents. And so a big portion of those apparently are still being analyzed. Government making available documents marked classified. They write TBD. They write next week, maybe? Next week? How about this one? Plaintiff, meaning Trump, creating a privilege log. They say TBD. How about 2 weeks? How's that sound? And how about Trump to categorize 4 categories by mid-October? Special master to provide logs to the DOJ. They say, well, whenever that's ready, that's a special master decision. And then they say the special master can make a report late October. We get deadlines early November, mid-November, late November, then any hearing on Rule 41 or related filings. Late November, right? They're like, man, we just push this on back. What's the rush? Plus, there's going to be holidays. It's going to be Christmas time. The kids are going to be on break and so there's no real hurry here. Trump's team, they say, Finally, although we recognize the time for full objections on the draft plan is not today, we are concerned, right? We're not supposed to be objecting, on these things. They say we are concerned that it contemplates resolving issues that were not raised by Judge Cannon in her order denying the stay or oral argument. Okay? And this is I was waiting for this. This is where we're going to be talking about scope creep, right? Judge Cannon appointed a special master and defined the boundaries of what this special master can do. Said, this is your hula hoop. This is your jurisdiction. This is where you live. And you have to live in there. You don't get to just do whatever you want all over the place, right? You're not the judge of the case. You're a special master. So she's maintaining control and jurisdiction over this. Now, what the government is going to want to do is try to commandeer the special master and start to have the special master exceed that scope and start to do things and answer things and sort of extend into other areas. And one of those other areas might be about consulting with NARA, for example, like we just talked about, right? The judge said they can communicate with NARA. The government came in and said, we strongly urge you to do it. Like, we can't order you to do it, but we strongly urge you to do it. Trying to expand that hula hoop a little bit, expand that scope. And Trump's defense is trying to say, hold on a minute. You don't even have, Mr. Special Master, you don't even have the power to do that. Even if you wanted to, you don't have the authority to do that. Saying we're concerned about this, contemplating issues that were not even raised by the judge. Specifically, Judge Cannon, writes Trump's defense, was aware of the likelihood of eventual litigation and a process where a special master would evaluate claims and make recommendations to the full court. While Trump is, of course, willing to brief anything ordered by the court under the auspices of a special master, right? We're willing to brief things like you want us to brief here, sir. We are concerned that the draft plan that you've given to us directs Trump to address whether litigation should be litigated under another case. In other words, plaintiff respectfully, they say, sees no indication that the district court planned to carve out related litigation for a merits determination by issuing magistrate for the warrant in question. Right? Saying that you're asking us to sort of go and open up this entire box about the justification of the original warrant and all of this other stuff. Well, that's not what we talked about. So they're saying, Judge, Mr. Special Master, this is a little bit outside of what we're supposed to be talking about here. Most importantly, none of the district court's orders have ever indicated that this was even in consideration. Trump's defense says, similarly, the draft plan that comes from you, Mr. Special Master, requires that Trump disclose specific information regarding declassification to the court and to the government, saying that you want us to communicate that we have declassified this or we have not declassified that. They say, we respectfully submit that the time and the place for affidavits or declarations would be in connection with a declassification motion, a component of its argument for the return of property, right? Saying that's not ripe yet. And remember, this is something that the left has been trying to make arguments about. Guys like Weissman and many others over at MSNBC have been saying, wait a minute, why hasn't Donald Trump proven his innocence yet? Why hasn't he, if he really did declassify these documents, why hasn't he provided evidence? Where's his signed order? Where's his recorded statement that he actually did all of that stuff? They're saying without that, he must be guilty. In other words, they're taking the burden of proof, which used to be in this country, for the government to prove, and they're shifting it over to Trump because they hate him so much they don't care about, thousands of years of Western judicial tradition. So they are instead saying, no, he has to prove his innocence by confirming that he actually did declassify these things. When he didn't raid anybody's home, he was sitting there at home and they raided him. The presumption of innocence lies with him. So Trump, in his defense, they're saying, Judge, it's not ripe for us to make those claims because we're not at Rule 41 litigation. And if you make us do that, they say the special master process will have forced Trump to fully and specifically disclose a defense to the merits of any subsequent indictment without a requirement, even in the district court's order. Okay, remember now, We are literally only talking about the documents that the special master now has possession over, right? They were with the DOJ. They're over with the special master now. This is about a limited, very limited juncture in this case. Donald Trump has not even been indicted yet. So making him now show all of his defenses about declassification or personal records or anything is not ripe yet because he has not been indicted. He still maintains all of those presumptions of innocence, and the judge in her underlying order from the district court didn't even require the appointment or the mandation that the special master go and investigate these claims at all. Wasn't even required. So Trump's defense, they say, in short, Trump has every interest in expeditiously moving forward on the document review, the characterizations, and any ensuing litigation. And with the government's help in terms of access to those materials and clearance for Trump's lawyers, we believe that the parties can meet the expected deadline of November 30th. While we have concerns about the inclusion of two aspects of the draft plan, timing of any declassification disclosures and briefing regarding the reversion back over to the magistrate judge, we are otherwise in general agreement with Your Honor's proposed sequencing, but suggest addressing the potential deadlines at tomorrow's status conference. Thank you for the opportunity to present some of these issues by way of assisting with tomorrow's agenda. Sincerely, James Trusty, out there at the DC office at IFRA Law. Also signed by Evan Corcoran, Lindsay Halligan, Donald Trump lawyers, and sent over to U.S. government prosecutors. That's Trump's agenda going over to the special master. They are meeting Tuesday to hash through these things. And Special Master Raymond J. Dearie will, of course, have more guidance on what is going to be required of the parties after that hearing. We'll get some more updates on that. So that is the Dearie Order. That was the prosecutor's response, proposed agenda. That was Trump's proposed agenda and response. But that's only one portion of this whole thing. Government prosecutors appealed Donald Trump's special master win over to the 11th Circuit, and they filed a big 29-page brief. You can see that it landed on the 11th Circuit's court docket, and this is what it looks like when you go over there. Filed back in August, notice of appearance, all of this originating from Judge Aileen Cannon, and the same U.S. attorneys that we've come to familiarize ourselves with, people from the National Security Division, people like Bratt and others, are listed here. Actually, this is by Juan Antonio Gonzalez is the lead lawyer here. From Trump's team, we see the regular team there. Christopher Kesey, James Trusty, Lindsay Halligan, and others. But they filed this appeal because they do not want the special master to get involved. They don't want any third parties meddling with their investigation of Donald Trump. 29-page appeal by government prosecutors in the case Donald Trump versus United States of America. Remember, they're appealing the motion for a partial stay pending the appeal. They're saying, we don't think a special master is warranted at all. And while we're appealing that issue, we want those 100 documents that Judge Aileen Cannon ordered be withheld from the government investigators. The government prosecutors want that undone. They want those documents back. Here's Jay Bratt, along with Julie Edelstein and others, Juan Antonio Gonzalez, Matthew G. Olson, who we've talked many, many times about on this show, Assistant Attorney General, one of the individuals who has made his entire career on the back of homegrown extremism. These are the people that we're talking about. Motion for a partial stay pending appeal. They say, here's the certificate of interested parties that have been notified about this. And so they're just communicating that everybody who has an interest in this appeal has been properly notified. Take a look at all of the underlying parties that were labeled in the original underlying case. AP, Bloomberg, you got Jay Bratt, of course, CNN's here. Aileen Cannon, the judge, CBS, Evan Corcoran, Raymond J. Dearie's notified, Julie Edelstein's a prosecutor, everybody, Halligan, Trump defense, NBC, Raj K. Patel was a pro per filing there in the prior cases, New York Times, right? They're all there saying, Judge, we're notifying everybody in that underlying case that we are appealing. Dated September 16th, filed in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Here's the introduction and the summary. They say, Judge and judges, in the 11th Circuit, the district court has entered an unprecedented order enjoining the executive branch's use of its own highly classified records in a criminal investigation with direct implications for national security. Extremely dramatic. Now, unprecedented is the appointment of a special master. Okay, it's a referee who got appointed to oversee what's happening. Unprecedented to do that. And this is the point where I was explaining that the government has presumed the outcome on this. They've already come to their own conclusion. They say that the executive branch, meaning the presidency, has been enjoined from using its own highly classified records. That is the subject of the debate. Donald Trump doesn't say that. So they are supposing the conclusion. They write, in August of 2022, the government obtained a warrant to search Trump's house based on a judicial finding of probable cause, saying that there's going to be the end of America. We recovered 100 records of classified markings. Some were extremely restricted. 2 weeks later, Trump filed action here in suing us, demanding that a return of the seized materials, demanding a special master review, an injunction barring the government from their criminal investigation pending the outcome of the special master review. And they're so concerned about this because it's going to impede their work. And they really got to get this in before the election. Although the government, they say, this is appealing to the 11th Circuit, prosecutors say, although the government believes that the lower court, Judge Aileen Cannon, fundamentally erred in appointing a special master and granting this injunctive relief, the government seeks to stay only the portions of the order causing the most serious and immediate harm to the government. And do you believe that? You really believe that? They're like, well, we were going to win everything, but we're only going to fight on these two pieces, on these two fronts. We were going to win everything else, but forget all of that other stuff. So they're going to leave all of that behind, and they're only going to focus on these two areas. One, restricting the government's review and the use of the classified marking documents, right? So just putting that in the one side. And number two, requiring the government to disclose those records for the special master process, right? So they're limiting this intently to only those 100 or so documents. That's the only basis of this appeal. And they say this court should grant that modest but critically important relief for three reasons. So it feels to me like they're sort of abandoning some of their efforts here. Because if you've been joining us here on this channel covering all of these motions, the government sure had a lot of bravado in their previous filings, didn't they? Remember, they gave Judge Aileen Cannon kind of a deadline. They said, hey, you either undo what you did by this date, otherwise we're going to appeal it to the 11th Circuit. And they did. Judge Aileen Cannon said, well, here's my opinion. And they said, all right, well, we're appealing it. But we were listening here, reading through the motion, and we said, well, that's kind of bold. Demanding the judge do something or else? Okay. It's like we're going to your manager type of argument. And they did that. But now they're abandoning all of that. They must really, 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 really want these 100 documents back. There's something in there that they don't want going to this special master. Let's see what the arguments say. They say first, the government is likely to succeed on the merits. Same argument we've heard many times. So let's see what we can glean from this. They say the district court, Judge Aileen Cannon, appointed a special master to consider claims for a review of the documents. But they say Trump has no claim for those records, which belong to the government and were seized in an authorized search. This is that possessory interest. They say those records are not subject to any possible claim of attorney-client privilege, and neither Trump nor the court has cited any authority suggesting that a former president could successfully invoke executive privilege to prevent a former executive privilege or another executive branch from reviewing its own records, citing Nixon. Now, again, right, Judge Aileen Cannon addressed this point, and she said that you could interpret it differently and that it wasn't as clear-cut as they're implying here, and I agree with her. Second, they say the government and the public would suffer irreparable harm if they don't get those documents back, right? Those 100 documents, if they don't get them back, we're all going to die. The district court recognized the government's overriding interest in assessing and responding to the national security risk from the possible unauthorized disclosure of the records bearing classification markings. And again, nobody knew anything about these documents until the DOJ got their hands on them. They were sitting there quite peacefully and patriotically in Trump's closet in Mar-a-Lago. And then suddenly, as soon as the FBI and the DOJ got their hands on them, everybody knew what was in them. Everybody. It's leaking over to the Washington Post. They have like a straight line access to the Dropbox folder. The court, but now they're saying, oh my gosh, now if we don't get those documents back, if we can't process those 100 documents, we're all going to die. The court thus stated that its order was not intended to impede any ongoing investigations, but they write, as they're appealing to the 11th Circuit, but they say, hey, but as the head of the counterintelligence and FBI division explained in a sworn declaration, and we read that was Alan Kohler's declaration saying, it's going to be impossible. America's over. He explained that a criminal investigation is essential to mitigate national security risks. And so the court's order, Judge Aileen Cannon's order, hamstrings that investigation. And it places the FBI and the DOJ under a threat of contempt that the court if they later disagree. It irreparably harms the government by impeding their criminal investigation. And they say, third, the limited stay would impose harm on the plaintiff, no harm on Trump. Okay, so if you give those documents back, those 100 documents, if they go back over to from the special master back over to government prosecutors, they say it doesn't hurt Trump. They say it would not disturb the special master's review of all of the other documents, including the attorney-client privilege stuff, nor would it infringe any interest in confidentiality. The government's criminal investigators have already reviewed the records, and the district order contemplates their review for national security purposes. And you say to yourself, wow, that's really a really interesting interpretation. They say, if they have evidence that is, in their interpretation, theirs, it's not going to harm Trump. But if their interpretation is wrong and that evidence is Trump's, right? If it is his materials, if it is declassified, if it is personal records instead of presidential records, they don't give us a basis for any sort of out on that. I guess in that case, wouldn't Trump be hurt? Wouldn't he be harmed? But they're not accounting for that at all. Finally, they write, because the government and the public will suffer irreparable injury absent a stay. Again, whatever that is. A nuclear bomb's going to go off. How are we all going to die? I don't know. But absent a stay, if the special master, who again is not going to do anything with these documents, right, other than just review them. It's Raymond J. Dearie. He's like 80 years old out of the Eastern District of New York. He's been doing this for 200 years. So I don't think he's going to be a spy who turns this over to, what are they worried about? North Korea, Saudis? I don't know what they're all freaked out about, but apparently these nuclear codes are going to somebody. What is the irreparable injury? We don't know. But they give us the rest of the background here, and you can see there's going to be a big statement. Let's take a quick look at this. Yeah, a lot of this is going to be sort of stuff we've already covered here. They're giving us a background on what happened with Trump and Mar-a-Lago. They talk about the proceedings, which we've covered at length. We've covered all of the arguments. Remember, they've made the same arguments about the classification markings. The crux of this is that they own the property. And if the government owns the property, Trump really loses the ability to make much arguments. But as Aileen Cannon said, that is presuming the conclusion. All right, so let's see how they're wrapping this up here at the end. The conclusion: the district court's order should be stayed to the extent that it enjoins the further review and use for criminal purposes, and that it requires the government to disclose those records to the special master. They're asking the appeals court, don't give that stuff to the special master, or if the special master already has it, give it back to us in the government. Certificate of compliance, certificate of service, both there. That is the appeal. And Trump, in the Court of Appeals has been ordered to respond to this by 12 p.m. on Tuesday. So Trump and his defense team are going to have to rapidly come up with their brief to the Court of Appeals, and we'll see where that goes. Now, we also had a very interesting filing here. There was a motion to intervene filed by the United States Treasury Department. The Treasury Department, what the heck are they involved in the Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago search warrant saga? How did that happen? Well, here's what it looked like. The U.S. Treasury motion to intervene. Oh, this is weird. It's a 2-page document. It's in the United States of America versus the sealed search warrant. And this is the case that was signed off on by Judge Reinhardt. This is the Mar-a-Lago search warrant case. Remember, out of the Florida district for the Southern District of Florida. So the U.S. Treasury files a motion to intervene. It says the U.S. Department of Treasury through the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshal Service, wow, have arrested, seized federal securities containing sensitive documents, which are subject to the defendant's sealed search warrant by the FBI arrest. What? See attached arrest warrant under the National Security Act, U.S. Code 3162. Pursuant to 24A1A2, the U.S. Department of Treasury must intervene to protect the interests. Dated by the U.S. Department with 2 N's on there of the Treasury intervenor. Dated September 8th. Came in priority mail, U.S. Southern District Court. Looks like a FedEx package. Came in via certified mail. Somebody paid $16 and sent that into the court. Okay, so the U.S. Treasury Department is intervening against Trump? Well, this is weird. All right, here's the attachment they sent over. U.S. Department of Treasury, the defendant is seized federal securities. Serve at CNN Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Department of Treasury, Brent McIntosh. All of these documents, Linda Banks, title person, U.S. Department of Treasury is a subpoena warrant. This was filed, I don't even know, really what we're looking at here. Ashley Poor, office manager from the U.S. Marshal's office, filed in the clerk's office, July 29, 2021. What is all this? I guess it's the U.S. Department of Treasury. Okay, so all of that got filed in the search warrant case. Now, as you can probably guess, the U.S. Department of Treasury did not actually file this. All right. The government confirmed accordingly. Prosecutors said, Judge, I don't know what that was, but the United States of America hereby moves to strike docket entry 128. That purports to be a motion by the United States Department of the Treasury to intervene in the instant matter. The United States has confirmed that the pleading was not submitted by the Department of Treasury, but rather mailed to the clerk of the court by someone not associated with the government. Signed here by Juan Antonio Gonzalez. So another very interesting motion in this case. We've seen a couple of these. But here, the government confirming the Treasury is not yet going after Donald Trump. And so that, my friends, is the update on the Donald Trump saga. We've got a lot more to cover. There's going to be a big hearing tomorrow. Well, several of them are due tomorrow. We've got the special master hearing that's going to be taking place. We'll have a formal agenda, probably have a calendar and more details on what's coming out after that. But we also have a deadline by the Court of Appeals. So Donald Trump and his defense lawyers, his appeals lawyers, more specifically, are probably typing away like mad, trying to get their brief ready and submitted because they've got a deadline coming in hot Tuesday at 12 p.m. And so we'll, of course, cover that. I'm sure we'll have much more of that tomorrow. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting the work here, joining us over at our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or becoming a member on YouTube. Either way, I appreciate your support. All right, my friends, and we've got another segment to get into before we carry on. Shout out what's going on over on local. Shout out to John McGarvey, engineers in the house. Zach Nichols, New Hope. Gio's over there. Shout out to Gio. And we've got hopefully one final clip on these Martha Vineyard wine moms here, because we just can't let it go. But cheers, my friends. Cheers. Water break. Got to stay hydrated, lest your mouth turns into parchment. And so, we'll get right into it, shall we? Okay. Meltdown at Martha's Vineyard as the migrants are deported. Lot of people there on the island, just really emotional after a really tough, really trying couple of, 44, 45 hours of dealing with immigrants. And so we're going to talk about this today because they were crying all over the place, but CNN had this really interesting headline that captivated a lot of people, saying that the people on the island at Martha's Vineyard said that the immigrants enriched us, which sounds like a very beautiful experience. They were reporting over there saying that after the 44-hour visit, that there was a mark left on the island. After sharing hugs and teary goodbyes with roughly 50 migrants who had arrived unexpectedly by plane, the volunteers who sheltered them carried out tables, chairs, and packed food onto cots and onto trucks. They say that there were all sorts of emotional, heartbreaking parts of things happening, and days of uncertainty ended after they all left. The asylum seekers were from Venezuela, and they all got booted right off the island. And I'm pretty sure they changed this story. This story changed from something that I was looking for in here. And I'm pretty sure the story got updated a little bit. But they didn't stay long, right? There were a lot of people there who were really, really upset that this happened. And they were really animated that 50 migrants landed out over on their island. But they weren't allowed to stay long. CNN was covering the deportation of the Martha's Vineyard migrants. And they noted that this happened relatively quickly. You know, the migrants were there. They landed on a surprise plane from Ron DeSantis before being just evacuated quickly. Here's what that looked like.
After less than 48 unexpected hours in Martha's Vineyard, nearly 50 Venezuelan migrants were given a warm send-off. Volunteers embracing each person as they boarded buses. Then ferries, and onto the next part of their long journey. Their unannounced...
That's pretty quick. They just landed, and look at all those things that had to happen for them to go. So they have a nice send-off party. We had already heard from several of these individuals. They get onto buses, they get onto ferries, they get onto other buses, and then they land over there in Cape Cod, many, many miles away from the rich people on Martha's Vineyard. Gone after less than 48 hours, and a big shock for many people. Now, you can see that the scene on Martha's Vineyard was one of high emotions. We have this woman who was resides on the island, very upset that the Martha's Vineyard migrants had to go. And this woman is so emotional, you can just see it in her face. The meaning of this experience and how close it hit her heart. Watch the sad, somber frown on her face as she waves goodbye to her temporary distraction. Teary-eyed farewell hugs. They all worked around the clock for 48 hours, and everybody is going over to Cape Cod to help them. Running away. Don't leave. Many headed for Florida cities. And you can see the emotions right here, and you see all these people in the background just waving and cheering and so emotionally just touched by this entire experience. The frowns, the sadness as they leave. Now, a lot of that was taking place all over the island. Here was another clip. This woman also extremely emotional that the migrants are leaving Martha's Vineyard. And we had heard from her previously. She had something to say to the media. And before the migrants left, after they left, she was very upset about it. Here's what she had to say.
Heart breaks for them because they were not the first priority. They're in my heart forever. I don't know what else to say.
So this woman says that the migrants were in her heart. They're always going to be in her heart. They're never going to leave because they were there and they're bonded now in crisis and hardship.
Heart forever. I don't know what else to say.
Extremely emotional. This CNN anchor is somebody who is sort of laughing at her, says, yeah, it was only like 48 hours, but listen.
So it was only 2 days, but there was a real connection made between the people here on Martha's Vineyard and those Venezuelan migrants.
Yeah, only 2 days, but like they were bonded, and that lady's whole life is emotional, and she's just doesn't even know what to do with herself. Now, the woman, of course, is very, very, struck by this experience. She says that they're never going to leave her heart, but of course, that's as long as they leave her house. She previously said that she doesn't want them on the island. When asked a hard question by the media, they said, what's the biggest challenge? She said, well, they've got to go.
So what are the most difficult challenges right now?
The difficult challenges are
got to go.
we have, at some point in time, they have to move from here to somewhere else.
Yeah, they got to go somewhere else.
We don't have the services to take care of 50 immigrants, and we certainly don't have housing. We're in a housing crisis as we are on.
No services, no housing, no capability to deal with migrants. And so you can't stay here, but as long as you go somewhere else, you're always going to be in my heart. Hopefully that matters. I don't know what kind of value that brings to be in this woman's heart, but maybe the migrants will be happy about it. Now, since they're so emotionally connected, they needed to make sure that they got these immigrants off of their island by bringing in 125 Massachusetts National Guards members who were activated to go help remove them. Amelia Ikeda at NBC said, happening now. Migrants flown into Martha's Vineyard by Florida's governors are boarding buses. 125 National Guard members activated to assist, which is pretty amazing because there was only 50 migrants. So it's over a 2-to-1 ratio, National Guard to migrants. Pretty amazing. And that's all that empathy and diversity and love from the Martha's Vineyard wine moms, who are, of course, very caring, accepting in their sanctuary cities. The immigration concerns are not just limited to Martha's Vineyard. Other cities, other states around the country are now also starting to feel the effects that Arizona and Texas and other states have felt for decades. And they're complaining about it. Muriel Bowsers, Washington, D.C.'s mayor, posted this in a statement, said that Texas is a border town, and in Washington, D.C., they're not like Texas.
We're not a border town. We don't have an infrastructure to handle this type of a level of immigration to our city. But we'll create a new normal here in our infrastructure and have a humane welcome for people and an efficient, service provision. But we don't have the ability. We're not Texas.
We're not Texas. We're Washington, D.C. We're not a bunch of cowboy yokels who do this, that, and the other here. We have real problems to deal with, like pronouns and, stuff like that. So we can't possibly be left to our own devices to figure this out. We need help from the federal government. But you can see now, this is just a small sliver of the problem, right? They had, 11,000, 12,000 people come through their area? How many have come through Texas? How many people sat under a bridge in Texas due to the Biden administration and what they did to those Haitian migrants? A lot. Same problem happening in New York. New York Mayor Adams said that this is a critical situation. The migrant crisis is resulting in a situation in New York where they need to have all hands on deck. Everybody's got to come up and help deal with this situation because of the resources that are required to deal with this new population. Here is Mayor Adams on CNN with Jake Tapper talking about this problem.
So more than 11,000 asylum seekers have passed through New York's shelter system since May, including roughly 2,500 bused to New York from Texas. You have warned that New York is, quote, nearing its breaking point, and you've talked about maybe bringing cruise ships to temporarily shelter these migrants. What help do you need from President Biden?
Martha's Vineyard and now cruise ships.
Biden and the federal government right now that you aren't already getting, and how much longer can New York continue without more resources?
Well, we should be clear that this is, as I stated, a humanitarian crisis created by human hands, and it is an all hands on deck moment where we're all supposed to come together and coordinate. Coordination during a crisis is something that we must do together, and that's the federal government, that is also the governor of the state of Texas, as well as the governor of the state of Florida. We should not be really treating other cities and municipalities in the manner that we're witnessing now. And so we need resources for housing, resources to make sure that we could properly give people the medical care, all of the basic necessities that you would give new arrivals that enter a city.
Okay, so the next question that's going to come from Tapper is about, I believe, is going to be about those resources. Okay, Mayor Adams just got done talking about all these resources: healthcare, housing, food, supply, school, educate, all of this, right? Very important stuff. He's the mayor. Okay, you're saying that this is an all hands on deck moment. Jake Tapper just said, you said you were at a breaking point. So what are you going to do to solve this? Well, we need all of this stuff. It's about coordination and community. Okay. But what about this influx? When are you going to run out of resources? And listen to how this sort of solution is proposed. It's just sort of a denial. It's like, we're not going to run out of resources because the law says we can't.
How long until you run out of resources for these migrants?
We're not. The law says we can't, so we won't.
Well, we're not. We're going to follow the law, and as well as our moral obligation, responsibilities. It's going to be challenging. We're experiencing the challenges in doing so, but we're obligated by law here in the city of New York. As has been mentioned over and over again, this is a right to shelter city, and we're going to fulfill our obligations.
Okay, right to shelter. If you're there, you have a right to shelter in New York, is what he said. So there will not be a resource problem because it's illegal to have a resource problem. And they have to follow the law. So therefore, there's no problems. Which I have to tell you, I didn't know that you could do that in government. If you just passed a law, things just work out because the law says so, which is pretty amazing. I mean, maybe he should be president and just pass laws and just solve everything, because that's all you have to do is just, well, are you going to run out of resources with the thousands of people who you say are causing a breaking point? No, it's not going to be a problem. We have laws against that. Oh, all right. Well, great interview, I guess, from Mayor Adams out of New York. So I didn't know it worked that way, but what do I know? Gavin Newsom is also shouting from the rooftops, screaming about the migrant busing saga, saying that there needs to be prosecutions or at least investigations by the U.S. Department of Justice. He's also hinting that he's going to be running for office, something we've talked a lot about on our morning walk and talks. But here's what Newsom said after Ron DeSantis sent some buses of migrants over to Florida. He wrote this over to the Department of Justice. Newsom says, "Hey, Merrick Garland over at the DOJ, I'm going to email this to you, brother." He says, "Dear Attorney General," Gavin says, "like millions of Americans, I've been horrified at the images of migrants being shipped on buses and planes across the country to be used as political props, going to Martha's Vineyard." Yeah. And by the way, the entire Democratic Party is based on using people as political props. They label people like they're trading cards with power-ups and levels based on their orientation and demographics and all other sorts of various indicia that are difficult to keep track of. the entire organization. Somebody's knocking on the door. Hang on one second. Let me figure out what's going on. All right. Not the feds, not the FBI. We're okay. We made it. Sometimes those things get a little bit, you never know. But we're good. We made it back. No SWAT. No SWAT. No SWAT. I always have to check, but it wasn't. No, it's all good. Okay. What was I saying? Political props. The Democrats use most of their political capital to treat people like political props, like trading cards with different, indicia all over the place. And so now Gavin Newsom is going to be upset that a bunch of migrants, not even a bunch, 50, got transported to a nice, beautiful location in Martha's Vineyard. Newsom says clearly transporting families, including children, across state lines under false pretenses is morally reprehensible, but it may also be illegal. There it is. Several of the individuals who were transported to Martha's Vineyard have alleged that a recruiter induced them, which is legal term, right, to accept the offer to travel based on false representations that they would have been transported to Boston, which is worse than Martha's Vineyard, and would receive expedited access to work authorization. The interstate travel at issue provides a basis for federal jurisdiction over this matter, right? They cross state lines. Newsom is saying they should be prosecuted accordingly. He says, accordingly, I strongly urge the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. DOJ, to open an investigation into possible criminal or civil violations of federal law based on this alleged fraudulent scheme. In particular, I urge the U.S. DOJ to investigate whether the alleged fraudulent inducement would support charges of kidnapping under relevant state laws, which would serve as a predicate offense for charges under the Racketeer Influence RICO provisions in the Organized Crime Control Act of 1970. It says, additionally, based on the allegations, the recruiters targeted individuals based on their national origin, and the intent appears to have been to humiliate and dehumanize them. Oh yeah, come on. Did you see them? They had beautiful clothes on. They look great. And if they were really angry, honestly, don't you think that they would have picked somebody and paraded them in front of the cameras? Like, let's be real. We know who these people are. They would have gotten the most angry person who was, very upset and willing to communicate about all of this. They would have gotten them, wouldn't they, if that person existed? Which leads me to believe that person doesn't exist. Here, accordingly, I urge the DOJ to investigate whether the alleged targeting of these individuals based on their origin is in violation of their right to equal protection under the law, whether it constitutes a civil right conspiracy in violation of U.S. code. And finally, he says, although I believe the U.S. DOJ's investigation should include these possible avenues, there may be others that the U.S. DOJ can and should pursue. I look forward to continuing to work with the administration on protecting human rights. Sincerely, Gavin Newsom over there from California, which it looks like he actually was able to type this up, which is pretty amazing. So via email, which means he must be running on a backup generator or something over there, because we know that California is basically back in the Stone Ages. But that's Merrick Garland, Attorney General, receiving a letter from Gavin Newsom over possible prosecution of Ron DeSantis, because they are very, very mad that they got completely embarrassed with the Martha Vineyard Wine Mom migrant meltdown that took place very recently. And we will, of course, continue to follow it. Thank you for subscribing and supporting the work that we do here, and for liking this video. I always forget about the likes. All right, we've got one final segment. It should be a short segment. We've got just some quick Biden clips of our poor, demented president. And let's cue it up before we get right into it. President Joe Biden making some very interesting new announcements, some shocking most people around the world, including his position on Taiwan, which is new, also alerting us that COVID's over, many other things that were probably big surprises to maybe even himself, including his administration, the White House, probably the Joint Chiefs, the rest of the cabinet. Everybody's kind of pretty surprised, really, based on what the president said during an interview over at CBS. The big one that caught a lot of people by surprise was this COVID claim that the pandemic is over. President Biden's walking with this fella over on 60 Minutes, walking down a car show, and he sort of glibly asks about the pandemic. Is the pandemic over? Is this something that, we can kind of move on from? Here it is. Very good of his team to not put a microphone right here. You can see he was trying to find that microphone to lean in and give it a little bit of a whisper, but there's no microphone there, which is very smart maneuvering. You just sort of take away the candy when the kid has had enough. You got to just take it away. So very good news that they didn't allow that to go into one of those whisper ceremonies. But the president, right, they're always trying to fib these numbers. Oh, it's only 8.3%, which isn't that much from the last month, which is only 8.2% or whatever. But everybody's feeling it. And it's not looking like it is abating anytime soon. So that is our just poor, total inconsequential, incompetent, demented, whatever you want to call it, president who is declaring new policy that apparently is not actual policy, but they just put him out there and ramble on because that's the only thing that they've got. And according to them, it's better than Trump. So that's Joe Biden. We'll continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and following along as we cover this case and many others. And that, my friends, is it for the program. We covered some serious business, not for the show. We've got comments, of course, to attend to today, but that we covered all of the Joe Biden saga, that bizarre interview, that, some actual good questions from that guy, whoever the interviewer was, some actual substantive questions, which were good, but Joe Biden, just sort of meanders through. And what's shocking about this is like, if any other president, especially Trump, had said something like that, it would be the end of the world, right? It would be a catastrophic meltdown because he doesn't know anything. But as long as he doesn't do that, as long as he's Joe Biden and not Donald Trump, he gets away with it. So we covered that. We covered the Martha's Vineyard Wine Moms. We talked all about the Trump Special Master's appeal. And now, my friends, it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. And so let's queue up our locals community, our locals chat. We're going to do a refresh over there. We're going to pull open some of these YouTube comments. Going to do a refresh over here. On this new formatting, the super chats don't pop up, so I have to sort of do them a little bit differently, which is no problem at all. Let's see what we had here today. Diano Hex is here and sent in a super chat and a super sticker. So shout out, thank you to Diano Hex with no questions on those. Not a banned account says, if he has nothing to hide, he has nothing to fear from Donald Trump. And he's been saying that, right? He's been saying that he's got nothing to hide. Also says, don't only criminals have something to hide? No, they don't. Especially criminals don't. I mean, everybody has something to hide. It's called your privacy rights. You've got, I have a lot of stuff that is sort of not public, right? We all do. It's privacy. It's called privacy rights. And so, government, prosecutors, a lot of people love to say that only criminals don't talk or only criminals hire lawyers. No, it's important to preserve your rights. Raymond Loera says, I think it would be hilarious if all those classified documents didn't have Trump's finger. Didn't we get that one last time? That was from last week. Here, yeah, we got that one last week. This one is from John McGarvey. He says, with a super chat, he says, just because I felt guilty giving Viva all your money. And what's funny about this comment is John McGarvey over on Locals. Here, let me see what we have here. John McGarvey over on Locals was on the Viva show over the weekend, and he posted this. Here we have this one. He said, here is a couple bucks that Rob Govea would have gotten if he worked on weekends. He sent that into Viva and Barnes while they're over there. And they pulled that, and Viva pulled that up on screen. Hey, I do work on the weekends. I just don't live stream, But I probably should. I mean, what kind of content creator am I? It's like sleeping on the weekends, just lounging around, not doing anything. Well, thank you for that, John McGarvey. And, you know, they deserve it over there. Those guys are sharp. Viva and Barnes are right next door to us. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. So go check them out. And thank you, John McGarvey, for sort of the double support. You're over on YouTube and also over on Locals. I appreciate that. Let's see. Trump 1 is in the house. Says that Martha's Vineyard is 100% deportations. That's right. 100-0. They're 50-0, right? They're also on homeless people too. They're like 100%. They're batting 100 on homeless people too. They are. I mean, they don't have homeless people because it's an island. They just say, do you have a home on this island? No? Well, guess what? You go off the island then. Bye. It's like a game of Survivor. Savvy Sue says, you are amazing. I think you're amazing, Savvy Sue. Thank you for that nice super sticker. And those are fun. Those are, you know, I don't think those pop up, do they? I think I might have missed those. K Bean says, M.A. Allen needs money in the swear jar. Great show, Rob. All right, you heard her, M.A. Allen. You heard her. That's from K Bean. And those are the super chats that came in over on YouTube. Thank you to my friends on YouTube for those great questions and that support. We had back over on Locals, we had Zach Nichols says, in all the warming up in the world can't stop me from typing letters backwards. I'm dyslexic. Well, sorry about that, Zach. I said on the YouTube chat, on the Locals thread, I said, warm your fingers up because it was the weekend. And, you know, sometimes things can get a little bit stiff over the weekends. Here, Geomancy Games, he's on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel on YouTube. He says, it's my birthday tomorrow, and I have a long series of blood draws and CAT scans to get through. Wish me luck and strength. I'll be there listening in the cancer treatment bay. Geomancy Games, we're praying for you. He's getting CAT scans and some more blood work done. Geomancy Games, of course, has cancer. That's why he's going to be in the cancer treatment bay. Geo, we're praying for you, brother. Good luck tomorrow. Happy birthday tomorrow. Oh, my gosh. You share the birthday with my brother, Joey. It's tomorrow. And Joey's probably going to make a cameo on the show tomorrow. So I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about Joey. You have a very, very good birthday, Geo. Happy birthday in advance. We'll see you tomorrow for another one. Words Mean Things says, hey, watchers. We have Rick's, hey, Words Mean Things. Rick's sick of BS says, I used to think that the government, national security, the joke they are, would have known not to go full R. But here we are, going full R. Amazing how commie our government is showing itself to be. Rick's sick of BS. Yeah, the full R word is the one from, what's the movie? Outstanding movie. I forget what it's called. Tropic Thunder. Got it. Speech Unleashed says, so the DOJ felt that these documents were so confidential that they could not be secure in Trump's locked storage, nor did they want a special master to review them, but they want to allow a third-party company to handle, scan, and copy them. How is that secure? Yeah, and that's from Speech Unleashed. Right. So it's sort of like they want more cooks in the kitchen, as many people as possible to get out there and sort of see these documents, evidently. Engineer 12 Volt says, hey, what y'all going to do when the Saudis run out of oil? Because they've apparently lied for the past 4 decades about their oil reserves. I mean, Biden has drained our petroleum by 35 million barrels a month since January. Experts say the reserve is going to last until election, but who knows? Off topic, I know, but when my oil investment performs a reverse stock split and Tesla reduces their materials for production, even when they're launching their most popular truck the same year, citing their economic worries, we're in for quite a roller coaster. Nice to be distracted by these political hack jobs against the former and trooper from Engineer 12 Volt. Yeah, against former President Trump, saying that, yeah, you know, I'm not sure about oil. I mean, I think that oil is a lot more abundant than people think. You know, and it's one of those things that has been used as a political tool. That's all. But if the United States really wanted to get serious about oil, I think that they certainly could. Rick Sick of BS says, former LEO says, maybe the Treasury Department was fishing and attempting to sell extended vehicle warranties. Maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe they have something ready to go. Thunder says, the prosecutors want to persecute Trump unabated. That's why they want to fight against the special master. They say he was a FISA judge. He approved the Carter Page warrant. I'm surprised they allowed him to be special master. Once bitten, twice shy. I'm sure a part of him, even unconsciously, wants to get revenge on the FBI. What do you think? Yeah, so, right, there was some concern about Raymond Dearie being the special master because he sort of gave Trump an adverse ruling previously. He authorized one of the search warrants for a Trump aide called Carter Page. And people are saying, well, maybe that's because he hates Trump and he's biased against Trump. And if he already stung him once, he's going to sting him again. Or, as Thunder 7 is speculating, maybe that's not true at all. Maybe this guy is going to be very irritated that he got lied to and is going to have something to say and do about it. I think I'm in agreement with that latter one. Yeah, I think that he probably would not be happy about what happened there. And they may have picked him for that reason. Like, they probably knew that he issued that warrant and picked him anyways. There's probably a reason for that. Pookie's mom says, will Trump have to pay for the prosecutors' travel expenses? Probably not the prosecutors, but certainly all of the other expenses. Yeah, they're going to stick him with a big, fat bill. Here, let's see. This one came in from Miss Lucky. Sergeant Bob says, now that the Martha's elite has an action plan and an incident command system set up, and they're enriched, maybe they can prepare for another 500. Yeah, maybe. Speech says, did you pick up that package someone sent you? Nope, not yet, Speech. It's coming up. Former LEO says, I believe the proper response to the government motion would be, what are you talking about? The classified information was out of the control of the government for 20 months, and they were all safe and secure until they were leaked by the FBI and the DOJ. Yeah, that's true too, former LEO. There were a lot of leaks that came. No leaks before until they got their hands on them, and then suddenly leaks all over the place. All right, and let's see what else we've got here. This one came in from Thunder 7. It said, someone's been listening to your advice, which you've been giving for years. If the FBI shows up at your door, moms or friends, just to chat, get their business cards, don't speak to them without first seeking advice of counsel, who will ideally reach out and arrange a mutually convenient time and preparation. You're welcome. Well, look, Harmeet Dillon is a very experienced lawyer, and she's probably, she's probably been given that advice longer than I've been given that advice. So I don't know that I can take official credit for it, but she is very smart, and very smart lawyers give good advice, and that is good advice. And that is something that, yeah, I've simplified sort of my framework into the 3 rules, right? The 1, 2, 3 rule, which I'm going to be turning into a course at some point, which I've already done a course, but I have to redo it. Anyways, the point is, it's good advice. Don't talk to the cops. Call a lawyer first. Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob says, what do illegal immigrants care? Not arrested, free food, shelter, comfy buses, saying that these are Martha's Vineyard denizens turn my stomach, saying they're phony. Yeah, I agree with you. Speech says, since the people at Martha's Vineyard feel so good about what they did, DeSantis should keep that good feeling going by sending at least another 1,000 immigrants over there. Ray K.O.K. says, I watched all the coverage and all the memes about Martha's Vineyard, but I can say tonight going through it with you, it hit me that I did not see a single black person in any of the videos, only rich white women. It's ridiculous. It's true. It is true. It is true. It's like, and it's honestly, it's really an embarrassing thing. What was that scene? I don't even know what that was. Right. And I don't even know what that was. Crying about the inequality for minorities, and then they need to be everywhere. Well, where are they on Martha's Vineyard? Everybody else has to live by their rules, but yeah, look, give me a break, okay? All of these Martha Vineyard women, they go back home and they scream at their landscaper or whatever, right? They scream at the person who is like, why did you do it this way or that way or whatever? This was moral virtue signaling. I'm sure they're very nice people on there, and I'm sure many of them are nice people. But come on. I mean, look, this isn't a humanitarian catastrophe. These were 50 people who showed up. These people's lives are so bland and monotonous. I guess that's what's, when you don't have to worry about money or anything like that, right? When you just have all of the carefree attributes of a beautiful life, something different is probably very exciting. And they probably got to, fulfill this. Like, wow, we got to help immigrants. And it probably felt like a Disneyland experience for them, to be honest. And then they just got to kick them right out and go back to their country clubs where they can be rude and probably not tip people who actually do the work that supports them. But they'll cry in front of the cameras. Former LEO says, I thought that the Texas and Florida were just following the relocation procedures that were already put in place. DHS was using it. Florida and Texas at least did it in daylight, didn't attempt to hide their intentions. Maybe someone will take the lead and point this out to Governor Newsom, that they followed the lead of the government. That's from former LEO. Thunder7 says, my last meme about Martha's Vineyard Day 2 siege wasn't an insurrection. Here, Martha's Vineyard be like, hate has no home here. And neither do the migrants. Yep. Here are a couple more from former LEO. Says, the New York mayor went to the Kamala Harris School of Debating and Public Speaking. Our leaders are ignorant. It's mind-boggling. Martin says, can't run out of resources, New York? Huh. Well, then I guess you're saying that you'd love all the migrants then. Speech says, it's sad that the U.S. has homeless citizens, but yet the concern is to spend government money on illegals. The U.S. has lots of people in need of routine medical care, but yet that medical care is being provided to others. All this compassion on the left for illegal immigration while U.S. citizens suffer who are here legally. Governor Newsom should focus on getting a handle on dealing with California's homeless before questioning what DeSantis did. Well, yeah. And yeah, I agree with that. I think that Gavin Newsom is just nipping at heels. He just wants some attention. E. Dantes is in the house, says, don't answer the door. It's SWAT. Or at least just turn the camera over to the door so that we can all see what goes on. I didn't think it was a SWAT. ZW Troll says, Governor Newsom needs to be investigated for treason and dealing with big tech, foreign government illegal trades, and especially the tyrannical World Economic Forum. Three Girlies is here. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Says, coming in late. Is the government trying to weigh down the special master with process? Let me read the rest of it. I always do this with Three Girlies. You ask a question, and then I start answering the question without reading the rest of your statement. And sometimes that's not wise. So I'll finish. Says, it seems like the judge gave them an inch and the government is trying to take a mile. Yes, exactly right. Also, I would have caught myself. Also, it seems like the government is trying to run up the tab by suggesting a third-party vendor. Wouldn't it be in the government's best interest to give the special master the full unredacted affidavit? By having the redacted affidavit, it's not giving the special master the reasoning behind all this crap. Yeah, the government is totally playing games. And so Three Girlies, if you, I'm not sure if you like what you caught up or what you've seen, but there's a discussion in there about the circle, the hula hoop, right? What's the scope of authority that Judge Aileen Cannon gave to the special master, and the government is going to try to extend that out, right? Oh, the special master, it was a suggestion that they talk to NARA, right? Aileen Cannon said, you can consult with them if you want. The prosecutor said, we kind of interpret that as you should consult with NARA. And so they're trying to sort of expand that hula hoop a bit. They're trying to say, special master, you kind of have these powers, but you really have these powers. And you should probably go do these things as well, and all of these things. And they're trying to sort of elbow for space. And Trump is going to try to do the opposite of that. I think a third-party vendor is certainly increasing costs. My opinion would be that wouldn't it serve the government's interest to say, yes, do exactly what we've seen, right? Get the special master, review the top 100 documents that are confidential as quickly as possible so that you can get those back. Now the special master gives you a thumbs up on that. This whole case suddenly loses like one of its main criticisms from Trump and the defense. If you have a special master review the 100 documents and say, yeah, probably confidential and probably not privileged and not personal records, they all go back to the government. Then what is Trump going to say? But they don't want the special master to get those documents. Why? Well, probably a reason there. Miss Lucky says, Sleepy Joe says the epidemic is over and the big drug companies cringe as their cash cow loses weight. Well, I'm not sure that, they're not going to lose any money, I'm sure of it, because it's still going to be required by employers and entities all over the place. Martin says 44 hours. That's how long it takes to leave an indelible mark. 44 hours. That's how much tolerance the rich have for the poor. 44 hours. That's how long it takes for wealthy Democrats to deport the indigent who they claim to love and support. 44 hours. That's how long it took for the rich white hermits behind their walls in Martha's Vineyard to port 50 immigrants off their special little enclave, plunked down on an abandoned military base while there's dozens of Airbnbs and VRBOs filling the town. We don't even have space for our own people, they literally said. During their whirlwind 44-hour visit this week, they were isolated there. They left an indelible mark on an island known for eccentric billionaires and millionaires and celebrities. Meanwhile, in Arizona, 10,000 illegal crossings per day from Martin. Thank you, Martin, for that. Yeah, it's totally hypocritical, and the double standards there sort of it's obvious and transparent for all to see, which makes it so ridiculous. Thunder 7 says a podcast that I listened to on the weekend said that it is precedent. It's now been set for the National Guard to be called in. Won't be long before DeSantis does it. Says I pray that Ron can refer to the humanitarian crisis when he uses the National Guard to move people out of Florida. Speech Unleashed says Biden says he keeps his schedule. What schedule? His calendar is basically blank and he takes every weekend off to go to his vacation house. Yeah, look, for all the criticism that Trump got about travel and vacation, Biden is like blowing him out of the water. If you look at the chart, it's not even close. Here, we had another one come in from C. Reed. He said, first, Biden is getting told, let's go, Brandon. And, oh gosh, like the new king doing something. Yeah, so Biden showed up to the Queen's funeral and there were people shouting, let's go, Brandon. Martin, oh, did I miss Super Chats? Are we doing Super Chats from 916? We did. I was doing them, but then I realized I was doing old ones. Former says, the Fed is raising rates between 75 and 100 points, or the mortgages and home sales are going to tank. Yeah, it's not going to be good. Sergeant Bob says, do not work weekends. Life is too short. Take time for yourself. Well, I do typically, work and do stuff, but I do not do live stream shows on Saturdays or Sundays. I do post morning walk and talks on Saturdays. Yeah, but I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about, as I continue this transition, not in genders, but in sort of, work duties and obligations. Yeah, we may be doing some more, more streaming. Jason says, that's my president. Can you believe my luck? Another root canal on a Wednesday. Apparently, then I'm done. And that's what happens when you put stuff off and blame COVID for not going to the dentist office. You're right. You got to go to the dentist. That's right. I'm probably due up for another cleaning here now that I think about it. Former LEO says, yesterday on live chat, first thing I diagnosed the audio problem to be a wonky cable or a connector. Yesterday on the live chat. Well, I didn't do a live chat yesterday. Martin says, every 20 years, they tell us that we have 25 years worth of oil left, and that dries off the cost of gas incrementally. It does. They tell us that all the time. Paul Me No is saying this came in from a request of the Crunk community. Let's see what this one is. Oh, gosh. Hang on a minute. We can shine that big, oh, gosh, big, beautiful spot. Okay, gosh. This is a little scary. All right. This is Halloween theme. Put the kids away. This is a little bit scary. This is from Paul Me No. Oh, my goodness. Look at this one. Oh, my goodness. All right, here it is. We can shine that big, beautiful spotlight. Dang. I'm scared right now. Between this one, MAGA clown Robbie running all over the place, and between sniffing Joe Biden, sniffing over my shoulder, Paul, you're freaking me out. I don't know what's going on over there. That's from the request. Here, another one from Paul says, it wasn't that bad. Residents of Martha Vineyard share their first experience with poor minorities. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It was kind of nice. Nice, peaceful little event over there. All right, and we're doing a refresh over on locals, and then we're going to see what else we've got in here. We've got some new comments. Yes, we do. Martin STFU says, at least Martha's Vineyard Karens dispelled the trope of hysterical, hot flashing housewife, huh? Yeah, no, I think you're being facetious, but I think they just confirmed it's real. Ray KOK says Governor Newsom is just peacocking. Right, he's trying to sort of flash his feathers. NY, Renal MD says, Robert, his pupils seem appropriate for the light setup. Thanks, doctor. Given the differences in lighting, it's hard to make any commentary from that clip. His gait walk is not fluid at all. At times it appears festinating, hurried up. His downward gaze during walking is a sign he's not sure of his gait and he has a fear of falling. Typically in wellness, we do not need to concentrate to walk in a straight line. This is a possible reason why he walks in the wrong direction at times. Biden is so busy looking down at the ground, he loses track of his entourage. We do not need to sit back and interpret signs from Joe. We have a career of actions and comments, to put it mildly, are bizarre. Oddly, it's hard to find his Senate floor speeches. He's a serial plagiarist. Not one debate question of Biden involved how he was forced out of prior presidential campaigns for plagiarizing. I invite anyone curious about the young Joe to look up a full Senate hearing, a Judiciary Committee hearing during 1991 confirmation hearing of Clarence Thomas. Biden asked a question about natural law. It made no sense and was word salad. Biden was mentally deranged 30 years ago. One could argue if age has improved that mindset. It's a good comment, NY. Yeah, the lighting, it could have just been big, bright interview lights. You're right. Engineer says Governor Newsom has been busing his homeless people to Denver, Colorado for the last few years. So why is he blasting Ron? I don't know, because it's an opportunity. FedCure says, forget about the polls. GOP voters are virtually impossible to poll after Biden's MAGA Republican declaration of war from the gates of hell speech. According to top pollsters, rather than get on the FBI's terrorist list, GOP voters choose to remain silent. They don't like being called deplorables in 2016. Now essentially calling them terrorists is just going to make them vote and not poll. Red Tsunami. Interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, even not reporting to polls, right? Because you've been declared an enemy of the state. Martin says, for me, it's personal, but because my name isn't Martin, it's Martine and me. And my mom and my grandparents were all born in Mexico, and several of my uncles, aunts, and cousins' name came illegally. Most came legally, but in the 80s, it wasn't as easy as it was in the 70s to get a work visa. And the way that Dems ignored 75,000 children in cages in 2014 is a memory I haven't forgotten. Yeah, Martin, I haven't forgotten about it either. The Democrats and their policies, in my opinion, have been responsible for so much pain and hardship and suffering on both sides of the border. It really is reprehensible. For them to turn around then and say with a straight face that they care about people, that they're helping people, that they're saving people or something like that is insane, based on the hardship and the pain and suffering that I've seen here specifically as a result of their policies. So that came over from Martin at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're doing a quick refresh before we wrap it up for the day. Saw a very generous super chat come in with no question from Ditka's Bears. Thank you, Ditka's Bears. Very generous of you. And Ditka's Bears is always supporting the show and the work that we do, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you for that. We had one come in from another one from FedCure says, by the way, we watched the entire funeral of Queen Elizabeth on PBS. Not one time did they show Trump and First Lady. We wouldn't have known the Trumps were there until reading Jason on Blast, California Post here. Okay, so interesting. Yeah, and I don't think that all of the former presidents were invited over there, right? I think only Biden was, but there was another ceremony for the former presidents that was somewhere else. And so I think that it was, I think what you're saying, right, is they probably were just showing, Obama and Clinton, and they weren't even showing Trump. And then Trump was obviously there with them. But that's just what they do. They were trying to make a big deal out of that Trump wasn't going to be physically in London. And that turned out to be basically nothing. So kind of ridiculous. But looks like we did a refresh, my friends. And that is it for us over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Doing one final refresh over on YouTube. Make sure I didn't miss anything on the day before we leave it there. And it looks like we are caught up, my friends. So that is going to be where we do leave it. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show, all of our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, chatting away. We've got Savvy Sue, JC the Music Man. JC says, when did you start the whole Watching the Watchers pitch at the show's opening? I don't know. I don't know when I did that. John McGarvey says, night. Zach Nichols is in the house. Savvy Sue. John McGarvey, Tweak, Phantasmagloria, all over there chatting away. Shout outs to C. Reed and others. Our friends over on Rumble, Skylar Blue, Larry One, Anything's in the house, Dog Digger, Nexit 2020, Eric Scorpio, J Viv is in the house. Shout out to J Viv, who's a newbie. Isle Paint and others are over there. Over on YouTube, shout outs to our members, Curtis Bartle, Raymond Loera, Kevlar is in the house. K Bean is here along with Curtis Bartle. Shout out to Playin' Hooky. He says, Rob, what's your take on the impending economy crash? Yeah, I think it's basically happening. I mean, I think it's probably a foregone conclusion at this point. I think that, you know, the money solution that they always tapped into to solve other economic problems is not going to be available, and it's not going to be good. So if you want more on that, what I've been listening to is the All In podcast. I listen to that podcast pretty regularly, and there's a guy who I follow who is... Several people, right, are sort of prognosticating not looking good, especially if the Fed has to increase interest rates in the next week. Not going to be good. But hopefully it's not accurate and I'm wrong. But over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, come and chat with us. We also have YouTube. You can click the join button right next to the subscribe button, which is another great way to support the show. You get the gifts. You also get those morning walk and talks that we do every morning, 6 days a week, talking about news and headlines, morning news, and we say hello and good morning, and it's all fun. So come check those out. Also, I am a criminal defense lawyer at the R&R Law Group, which is a criminal defense law firm. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that in their lives. An amazing team of attorneys. We're doing a full sort of company-wide event on Friday, which is going to be a ton of fun. We have some very, 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 very smart individuals on our team, and we're going to bring all of our heads together and smash them and see if something cool comes out, and I'm sure that it will. And so if you know anybody who needs help with any criminal case, any type of trouble with the law, 480-787-0394, rrlawaz.com. is the website where they can schedule a free case evaluation online. We really are passionate about the work that we do. Thank you so much for thinking about us when you're out. If you've got friends or family or neighbors or anybody who needs help, really appreciate you referring them over to us. Thank you to our mods who mod down the fort and keep things nice and orderly in the chat. Big shout outs to Vientikis, although I don't think he's here today. He's on game night. Okay, great. We've got K Bean, though, who is just outstanding. And it's almost like, Vientikis who? Who? I'm just kidding, V. I love you. But shout out to K Bean, shout out to Just Cause, shout out to Lean, shout out to Playin' Hooky, shout out to Zulu. We also have Geomancy in the games who swung on by, and our friend Henry Dixon. Thank you to our big spotlight supporters, Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at qsimple.com. Shout out to John over at qsimple. Go and support his work. There's somebody in the chat, somebody named Trump is number one. Says one of those names is wrong. Who could that be? Trump is number one is in the house. Who could that be? I don't know who that is. Is that Lean? It's not Zulu. I saw Zulu there. K Bean, Trump one. Is that Just Cause? Is that Just Cause? It might be. I'm not sure who it is. I'll have to figure it out later. But I just saw it. Trump one's our new mod. Which is not a statement of fact. It's a label. Got to be very careful for the YouTube censor. I said it's a name, not a fact. Gosh, ridiculous. Oh, gosh. Oh, is it Ronnie? Oh, is it Ronnie? R? Oh, the logo. Oh, it's Ronnie Cole. Oh, Ronnie. Oh, yeah, I could have looked at the logos. So, yeah, Z Zulu has a Z on there. Yeah, R. Okay, well. Take it easy, Zulu, all right? I'm a little slow over here. All right. But that, my friends, is it for the show on the day. Thank you to everybody who is a part of the program. We're going to be back here tomorrow to do it all again, and I hope to see you right here, same time, same place, same location, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.